Hi, I'm Dave Lieber, and welcome to the Dave Lieber Show. And that really is me falling off the stage. And I did make America's Funniest Home Videos, but I didn't win the grand prize. Well, welcome to the show. We have a very special guest today, someone who I'm very enthusiastic to call a friend. But first I want to talk to you about Amon Carter. You know, I wrote a play about him and a book about him. He ran the Star Telegram, WBAP, Channel 5. He was the media mogul giant of Texas. And he made a lot of money in the oil business, and he put that money into the Amon Carter Foundation, which has given now since 1945 $860 million. And my guest today is John Robinson, the Executive Vice President of the Amon Carter Foundation. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here.
You're here for a very specific reason. You have done something that most people say they're going to do but never do, which is write a book.
That's correct.
Your book just came out about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And it's called Your Next Inspiration, Ideas for Fundraising and Grantmaking. And for someone who's handed out the millions that you have, you're an expert on that. So I'm curious, what made you write this book?
Well, like I said, Dave, I've been at the foundation 45 years, and a lot of people said, you ought to write a book about what you do. And I used to think about, there's no way to tell people what I do. And I was rereading a book by Harvey Pinnick called The Little Red Book About How to Play Golf.
Yeah.
And so there were these little 1- and 2-page stories, and I said, that I can do. And so what I tried to do is go back through, we make about 200 grants a year, and so which grants were somewhat unique, a little bit different, or just had a different twist to it, and hopefully people who read the book will get ideas. It's not a how-to book. It's here's some things that you may have never thought about before, and here's a different way to look at it. And so here's examples. There's probably 130 different examples in the first 2/3 of the book. The last third of the book, I talk about here's stuff that I think about to be effective in our grant making and to hopefully make a difference. And so the audience is people who are in the nonprofit sector, that try to raise money, and also another real important niche is people who are generous and want to make an impact with what they give. I hope there's some ideas for them that they can be a little bit more effective in what they do.
I find it to be really interesting because it shows many, many ways to raise money and to build membership in nonprofits.
Right.
I have a theory that nonprofit defines Texans. And Amon Carter said a man must live with the community, not off it. And here we have a guy who started a foundation in 1945 to keep his promise to God that he would bring his son back from World War II. And here we are all these decades later, and you are running a foundation which is highly successful. And I just think the direct link between him and here today is really, it's fantastic. A man must live with his community, not off it. And this book is all about that. There's so many stories in there about ways to raise money and help people. I think this book is going to help thousands of people in dire situations get money, get health care, get a better education. Don't you agree?
Well, I sure hope so. You know, I had about 10 people read the draft along the way. You were one of them. And one of them was a lady named Rose Bradshaw, who's the CEO of the North Texas Community Foundation. And she was one of my really big cheerleaders because after she read the early draft of the manuscript, she said, I want every one of my donor advised fund members to have this book. These ideas they can use to multiply the impact that they want to have with their philanthropy. And so that was a big encouragement. There was a guy in Boston who was in Fort Worth that I did not know, named Chip Flaherty. And we were talking about the book, and I kind of got this talking about how I started. And he asked if he could read it. I did not know that he owned Walden Pond Press. And so when he told me, I've got something special there, that really was an encouragement to try to make this thing a reality and finish writing a book.
I finished the book last night, and I give it an A+ on creativity. Some of my favorite examples that you give, let's see, they go from simple to complex. For example, to raise money for the Fort Worth Zoo,
Right.
if you gave a certain amount of money, you had a sign on your front lawn that said, "I went wild."
Correct.
Now, why is that successful? Little yard signs.
Okay, that's one of the early examples in the book. The first few, I try to connect the dots. Here's what somebody did. Here's what somebody did when they heard about it. So the story before the Fort Worth Zoo story talks about Tanglewood Elementary, public school down the hill from TCU. It's an upper middle class neighborhood, and if you went down any street, there would be yard signs in almost every yard that said WAC. And whether they had children that went to Tanglewood, whether they had children in private school, no children at all. WAC stood for wrote a check. There was peer pressure to be supporting the local public elementary school in Tanglewood, and so these signs were everywhere. So when I met with the Fort Worth Zoo, their big mover and shaker said, I know how to reach the big money, but we need broad-based support for the campaign. How can I reach a broader audience? And I said, well, if you drive around Tanglewood, you're going to see signs in almost every yard that say WAC. And she said, I can do that. So about a month later, on a Sunday morning, the donors who had already given to the campaign, there were these purple and pink flamingos. It wasn't the plastic kind. It was a waterproof wallboard type thing. And it said, I went wild. So the Monday after those signs started to show up on Sunday, the zoo's getting calls, what do I have to do to get one of those signs? And so WAC didn't require a minimum gift. The Fort Worth Zoo did require a minimum gift, but she raised about $10 million with those signs. But that was the whole idea, is here's an idea, I want other people to make it work for them, not to do what they do, but what is their twist that makes it work. Going back even a step, I put this in the introduction. The first time I was exposed to this concept, I was president of Philanthropy Southwest, and they had a program called 30 Ideas in 60 Minutes. And so different foundations had 2 minutes to pitch a little idea that they'd done something that was a little bit different. So this guy from Phoenix said, every year we help the food bank, and it dawned on us, if people don't have money to feed their families, they don't have money to feed their pets. So they started putting pet food in with the people food delivery. Okay, pretty good idea.
Brilliant.
As soon as he said that, Dave, the thing that occurred to me, if the food pantry knows the size of the families they're serving, maybe they know the ages of the children, why don't we use that food pantry delivery for other purposes like books? Why not put books in with that? He said nothing about literacy, but that's the thing that made me think of. And so the whole concept of the book is here's ideas. And when you hear it, you may think of something else. So,
Man, the man's a genius. Another one that I liked was if you want to have your name inscribed on a plaque, you have to give money.
Right.
And until you,
Right.
give me the money, your name's not on the plaque.
Okay. So anytime there's a capital campaign, for people who are interested in this kind of thing, there's about 50 pages of different capital campaign strategies we've been a part of. The toughest dollars are always the last dollars. No matter what the goal is, there's a little bit remaining, and so people are going to go, and how are we going to get there? And so one of the ideas that I put in the book was look at these people that you're still waiting to hear from, and you need to let them know we're getting ready to carve this permanent wall. So if you want to be part of this campaign, we're going to have an answer by such and such date. You can work out the terms with it because sometimes they may be a little uncomfortable. They may feel overcommitted. So work that out with them, but let them know you're going to have a signed commitment before they put that name up on that permanent wall. It proves to be a very effective motivator.
Well, quick story. I wanted to cover the opening of Bass Hall.
Okay.
Carol Burnett, I believe, was
Right.
the talent.
Mhm.
And they told me that if I wanted to do that, I had to join, I had to pay.
Right.
So that night, I'm up on the third floor of Bass Hall, and I'm going through the big book, and I get to the builders, and there's my name listed as the
Right.
builder of
Yep.
Bass Hall.
Right.
I fell to my knees. I was hysterical.
You know, I've been at the foundation 45 years. I've had the role that I have now for 27. So my predecessor, Bob Crow, was involved with the construction of Bass Hall. One of the DNA things that I absorbed from him was Ed Bass did a phenomenal job. Bass Hall is extraordinary in every sense of the
Right.
word. So they had done that with a lot of major contributions. And so when they came to the Carter Foundation for support, Bob Crow said, "How about this? You keep working your major donor list, and when you get near the end, let's have a public campaign so that every gift will be matched by the Carter Foundation, so that just like you, there will be people who feel like they were part of this Bass Hall. It's not for somebody else, it's for the community." And that ownership, I think, is really translated into the popularity it's had the last 25 years.
So let's do John Robinson of the Amon Carter Foundation by the numbers. You've worked there for 25 years?
I've been employed 45 years. I've had this role is the grant administration since 1997.
Okay, and you have given out 5,000 grants in your career. And right now, the foundation has given out $160 million going back to 1945.
860.
800, what did I say?
160.
I'm sorry, 860.
That's the last 4 years.
Yeah, and then now in 1981, you gave out 5 million, but now you're giving out 40 million a year.
Correct.
It's grown. How has it grown so many times over? And are you just great at the stock market or what?
Well, we are the poster child. Let's go back a little bit further. Mr. Carter started the foundation in 1940. It was incorporated in 1945. It was funded in 1947 with the proceeds from an oil sale. After World War II, income taxes were 90% at a certain level. So one option would have been to give 90% of the proceeds to the government. Another option was to start the foundation. So the foundation started with about $8.7 million in 47. We had another influx of assets when Mr. Carter passed away in 1955. We received his art collection, 1/3 interest in Carter Publications that owned the Star Telegram, WBAP Radio, and NBC5, and about $7.4 million in cash. Carter Publications was sold in 1974, so we got another influx of cash in 74, so that got the assets up to about 75 million. By the time I came in 1980, we'd crossed 100 million. Now, one important fact on that, Dave, we have an art collection that we value at $1, so the foundation's really worth a whole lot more than we report, because way too technical for people. Foundations are required to give away 5% of their fair market value each year, regardless of income. So when we were $100 million, if we made $3 million, we still had to give away $5 million. If we made 10, we only had to give away 5. So from 1980, the assets have grown from 100. When I got this role, we were up to about 350 in the mid-90s. The stock market's done well. We've done well at private equity. The oil and gas holdings have done well, and so we've been able to accumulate assets. And so right now our assets are right about 800 million. So we'll give away our grant budget for the next year is $39 million based on some averages and stuff. And
These are some big numbers.
big numbers. I guess I want to stick around at least 3 more years because that's when we'll cross $1 billion. Plus we still have the museum.
Are we going to have a parade? That's not your style.
Not our style. Not our style.
So
We want to help other people have success. That's what the book's about too.
And so who should buy this book? Who is it geared towards?
I think anybody who's in the nonprofit sector, whether they work in the nonprofit sector or they support people in the nonprofit sector, I think there's an idea in there for you. Amazon, I have a website that you can get a copy of this book. It's got this real shiny cover. It's pretty nice. It's also on Amazon. I actually wanted to have a money-back guarantee that if there's not some idea in here that works for you, I'll give you your money back because I am 100% confident this book is for everybody. In fact, I had a friend of mine, just happened yesterday at lunch. He said, love what you did with the book. I read it cover to cover. There's another audience that you're not even looking at. Any business can apply some of these principles to whatever business they're in as far as how to break things apart, how to have a strategy to be successful. So, and the chapters are only 1 and 2 pages long, so you won't lose your attention.
That's modern bookmaking. That's right. What I came away with when I finished this book yesterday was that the man who wrote it has a deep and wide understanding of humanity. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
You've seen groups that come in and want to help people. You've seen other groups that just don't know what they're doing, but yet you have, I mean, it's just an amazing level of understanding of what makes human beings tick.
You know, Dave, I'll tell you, I think as much about the people we're not able to help as the ones we do. Everybody's passionate about why when they come to see me. In fact, there's almost a self-filtering thing that if they don't feel like they've got their ducks in the row and they're ready to go, they won't come see me. We're not that intimidating, I don't think. In fact, we're one of the few foundations who want to have a face-to-face meeting. I'm not looking for something. I do not have an online application.
Right.
I want to talk to people and hear what they're doing, because more often than not, we'll end up helping them with something other than they're asking for. Sometimes what they're asking me for is too easy. I want to help them think much broader. So.
That's my next question, which was, you don't just hand out the money.
Right.
You say, hey, I think we have 100 other ways that we can do this before you get the money.
Right.
And I thought that was ingenious.
Right. But they've got to own that idea. They should never, ever do that just because I think it's a good idea. In fact, I emphasize that a lot back in that grant making part. Grant makers, funders do not always know best. They need to understand the target audience that's trying to be met and what's going to motivate them to be successful, whether it be a social service type thing or something else.
Yeah, and it's not, when they leave your office, it's not what they expected to hear. They expected maybe to get money or insight. But
that's what I hear, yeah.
But then they get ideas,
right.
And they get a reason to go out and do things to show you that they know what they're doing. Right?
You know, I said this in the very first part of the book. One of the most terrifying things that I hear gives me arrhythmia when people say, we took your advice.
Right.
Because then I'm anxious about what selective hearing did they choose when they chose to take my advice.
Mm-hmm. I found a couple of paragraphs that really summarize the book and your philosophy. You say effective philanthropy involves empathy, passion, understanding, and a brain-based evaluation of the situation. Then you go on to say, the most important grant making comes from where the heart and mind intersect. It should never just be one or the other.
That's correct.
What do you mean by that?
Remember in school when they had those Venn diagrams?
Sure. Yeah.
So here's your brain, and here's your heart. If you only make decisions based on your brain, you're missing a part of the humanity. If you're only based on your heart, just because because of the empathy you have, there's a chance it won't be successful. Where those two intersect, that is effective grant making. people can do one or the other, but to have the greatest impact is where both of those things come together.
So let's confess that you helped me write my Amon Carter play. Especially, I left out a very important scene that you came up to me and you said, you've left this out. And I said, well, will you help me write it? So I wrote it, and I passed it on to you, and you rewrote it, and then I rewrote it, and then you rewrote it, and now you're like a co-author of Amon the Ultimate Texan.
Well, I'm not seeing any bylines on that, but that's okay. So, a little background for people watching this podcast. Dave Lieber, out of the blue, in the mail, sends me the manuscript for Amon the play. And he has a note written on the front of it that says, am I going to get sued? And so we met to talk about the things that, just to allay the fears that was not going to be a problem. And in the course of that conversation, actually the genesis of this book came up. But so I said, no, good, you're good to go. So you invited me to the final dress rehearsal before the first play at Artisan Theater. Yeah. And so my wife and I were there, and afterwards you said, well, what'd you think? I said, well, I love the play, but there's one thing missing that makes this story complete, and it's the oil part. And so you had this pained look on your face and said, I think it's a little bit too late. Since this is a one-person play, they got the script ready to go. But when we do it again, maybe we can add that. And so the part that I added is Mr. Carter was in the media business, but he knew the future was oil, but he drilled 90 dry holes before he found any oil. 91st well, this is perseverance. 91st well had production, nothing special, but he kept going. The 100th well that he drilled was the A.L. Wasson number 1 in Gaines County, and it flowed 67,000 barrels a day. Not pumped out, just the pressure came out. I've read another book about Mr. Carter recently, and they described that is still the third largest pool of oil in North America, behind the two in Alaska. And so that's where his wealth came in to further expand his reach, both from the media as well as the things that we enjoy today. In fact, we have he kept a royalty after he sold that property in 47. The foundation has a portion of a fraction of that royalty that his family kept, and it's still one of our largest sources of revenue today. It's a phenomenal story.
So I actually had to kind of make up that scene, which is one of the few scenes in the book that I didn't have to make up because the library had so much material at TCU. But I was able to come up with a line that I adore. I say that Amon Carter stands on the porch and he looks out at West Texas, which he called the prettiest backyard a city could ever have. And he says, quote, "My dear sweet West Texas, I've been good to you, now you be good to me." And that's what happened. And all of a sudden, boom, it explodes. Right. And it's hard to believe that all these years later, it's still producing profit. Right. That's quite a drill site.
A lot of people are surprised that Mr. Carter, he was a big supporter of TCU, obviously, but he founded Texas Tech. There had to be a reason to keep young men out in West Texas for them to develop the oil industry.
He was first chairman of the board of Texas Tech, and he also was the first honorary degree recipient, which made him Dr. Amon Carter.
Yeah, he didn't sign his stuff that way.
But what do you think he would think about your book?
Let me answer it this way. I have been fortunate. My first boss was his secretary. Katrine Deakins went to work for Mr. Carter in 1920, and she was still working for the Carter with the foundation until 1982. And there were two gentlemen that had worked with it for the Carter interest, so that'd be Carter Publications, Carter Foundation Production Company, which was an oil company, and the foundation. Both of them had started in the early 30s, and one retired in 78 and one retired in 80, which is when I came. But every Thursday we had lunch with Mrs. Deakins and these two gentlemen, and we heard the oral history of the guy that I worked with about Mr. Carter. And so they're telling stories about what Mr. Carter did 50 years ago as if it was yesterday. So he must have truly been larger than life every day in what he did.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I will. You're the executive vice president of the foundation, and
Right.
the board is made up of family members.
Correct.
So you have to shepherd these family members along and help them, because you're full-time and
Right,
they're obviously
right,
not.
Right.
So what's it like being an administrator of a family trust like that, with the family all still alive?
Yeah. Well, the board is now comprised of third-generation Carter family members. We have advisory directors that are fourth generation, and so they have demonstrated a lot of faith in me by letting me represent them. I do know what their interests are, and so we do make sure we're accommodating there's any institutions and projects that they have a real passion for, but they're very good about letting me make them aware of the variety of challenges and opportunities that are emerging within the city. And part of the things that helped me write the book was each of our board meetings, we have 3 big board meetings a year, and I write 1-page summaries of my recommendations for why I have these things moving forward for them to approve for grants. We have a 2-step process. We have a discussion meeting to talk about all the capital campaigns that are coming, all the things that we could be doing, and here's the things that are prioritized that have green lights moving forward, so that when we have the board meeting, they can say yes to everything that's on the agenda. So, and we have some other things I actually talk about in the book a little bit too. The world doesn't revolve around those 3 big grant meeting days, so they do give me discretion to respond to things that have that are time sensitive as well.
So what are the categories that you help? Education, health,
Arts and humanities, social services, and the always popular other. So
what kind of other?
what kind of other? One of the things that we're involved with is Texas 2036. There's a big effort to identify what are going to be the needs of Texas going forward. What about water, highway, health, energy? And so it's helping. It's people, very smart people that are envisioning where the state's going. I am astounded by the growth in North Texas. If the decisions had not been made 50 years ago to prepare for our water needs, we could not grow like we've grown. But those decisions were made not because it was politically expedient, it's because long term, that's what was in the best interest of the community. And so that's the one that jumps to my mind immediately. The Humane Society of North Texas, we fund the program that's to prepare clear the shelter every summer. We pay for all the spay and neutering to prepare the pets for adoption. Horses that are abandoned, we help the Humane Society have pastures and different types of fencing to protect them when they're sick or need to be treated. So there's almost nothing that doesn't cover in the other. But
He left his mark on the region. He shaped the region
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And the foundation is, with spending $860 million,
Right.
is shaping the region also, too. The work continues.
you know, it's in Fort Worth, they like to say that almost a day can't go by that you can't benefit from something that Mr. Carter touched.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's a very humbling responsibility to protect that reputation.
He was such a strong man with such a strong attitude about life. What's one funny story about Amon Carter that you like to tell people?
Well, you tell it in the Amon play. That the version that I tell, which is not, I guess it's been embellished, is during World War II. Franklin Roosevelt's in the White House, and he's on the phone. I think it was really one of his aides, but he says, "Yes, I will. I said I'd take care of it. Don't worry, it's done." So he hangs up the phone and he goes, somebody said, who are you talking to? He goes, oh, that's Amon Carter. He thinks I should run this country for the benefit of Fort Worth and whenever possible to the detriment of Dallas.
Right. And of course, we study that in my book,
Right.
Which is called Amon, the Ultimate Texan. We study how he competed with Dallas in 1936 to knock their fair out
Right.
and have the Fort Worth Fair instead.
Is it your book that has that when one of the oil companies was going to bring their southern headquarters, in the Dallas Morning News headline said Amon Cartered, that it was actually used as a verb, that they'd been Amon Cartered again when he got moved to Fort Worth instead?
Yeah, I saw that headline. He turned it into a verb. He stole all the business from Dallas. We've been Amon Cartered again.
You know, one other thing just occurred to me, the two gentlemen that were there from the 30s to the 70s, one of their sort of throwaway lines was, any story that you hear about Amon Carter, if it wasn't true, it could have been true. So,
I found him to be the most remarkable person when I went to work at the Star Telegram. He had been dead for many, many decades, but his spirit still lingered, his ghost.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like his ghost, his spirit is in sweet 1945?
Well, yes, I'll tell you why. In addition to the Amon Carter Foundation, Mr. Carter and his wife started a second foundation called the Amon G. Carter Star Telegram Employees Fund. So the Employees Fund was created right after the flood at Fort Worth in 1949, because a lot of Mr. Carter's employees lost their homes. And so he set up this separate foundation to help them rebuild their lives. And so after that was done, he kind of looked around and said, all right, what else can I do for my employees? Because this is when he's still on the Star Telegram, WBAP Radio, and WBAP TV, now Channel 5. Mm-hmm. And so he said, well, we have a pension plan at Carter Publications, but this was before ERISA. This is back in the 40s. So a male could get a pension for 13 years and 9 months, and females 15 years and 7 months. If you live longer than that, you're kind of out of luck, except for Social Security. So the Amon Carter Employees Fund was given permission to become a supplemental pension plan to take care of those employees for the rest of their lives. It also was medical hardship. It also was a scholarship program for employee children to go to college. So the paper was sold in '74, and I have a list of all the employees that work for Carter Publication and their spouses. That was 51 years ago, Dave. The ones that are still living, the pension plan's all taken care of, but we still take care of most of their medical needs.
Wow.
So
amazing.
Yeah.
And you also buy me half-price season football tickets to
that's
TCU.
Right. We had some other programs we started for people, and you kind of, once you're on the list, you kind of just get to stay on the list. So yeah, that's true. I'll tell you something, another funny story. I think all these OSHA rules are, I don't know if they're overdone or not, because these employees of the paper, the ones that are still living are now all in their 90s at least. They worked in an environment where there was ink flying around the press room, unfiltered cigarettes, bourbon in the bottom drawer. They're all pretty darn healthy, Dave. They're still hanging in there pretty good without OSHA overseeing the environment they were working in. So
my play is about to have its 70th performance in Arlington, at the Theater Arlington,
Great.
January 9th through 11th, 4 shows. Why should people come and see this play?
I've seen it several times. We did it as a dinner theater at the Fort Worth Club, really well received. People come away with the magic words, I had no idea.
Right.
And I think when they look around and when they hear these vignettes about what he did and the things he was involved with, I think they just come away going, here was a man that was very successful, but he did things that would benefit people that would never, ever even know he was the one behind it. And I think the world we live in now is so immediate that here's things that have spanned 100+ years. So,
Kelvin Dilks is the actor who plays him in all the shows so far. Connie Sanchez is the director. What I like about it is that people learn about where they live. His name is everywhere, but they don't know who he is. As he says in the play, my name hovers, but no one knows who I am.
Right.
So I think I've almost brought him back to life, in a sense. I've been a journalist for 50 years, writing for daily newspapers, and I think this is probably the most significant thing I've ever written, because thousands of people have seen it, and it helps develop their love and affection for Dallas-Fort Worth, or as he would say, Fort Worth, Dallas. So,
well, thank you for keeping him alive, because if I had not have met you, the book I wrote would not exist, because you gave me the guidance and the connections to do all the things necessary to make a book go from a dream or a concept to a reality. So thank
you're
you very
welcome.
much.
And the reason I did it was because I knew that this book would help thousands of people in different ways with all these ideas, So I'm really proud of you for putting this together.
Well, thank you.
And I want to invite you to come see the play, Amon the Ultimate Texan. You can learn more about it at amonplay.com. January 9th, 10th, and 11th at Theater Arlington. We're opening the 2026 season. My name's Dave Lieber, and I thank you for watching. And remember, a person's got to live with their community, not off it.